Hey, listen, that's going to be edited out.
Do it in post.
Welcome to Charm Persons. So happy to be here for the Talkback for Season 2 of The Remains. I am here with Emily Kipp, who played Anita Kent, Matthew Schwartzwalder, who played James Carraway, Sophie Pantel, who played Ash Murphy, and... what's your name again? Sorry, I just can't quite... I'm just
Veronica.
kidding. Angie Forshee, who played the wonderful Lex Cooper, who season 1 or episode 1, and I'm wondering, you know, if any of our viewers caught the Cooper last name tie-in before we did any of the actual like texts and stuff, because then it became pretty obvious what we were doing. But along the same lines of that, the first question that I wanted to ask for everybody tonight is I wanted to ask you for a question, and we'll go ahead and start with you, Angie. How did Lex Cooper come about? What made you want to do Lex Cooper? Where was she birthed in your mind?
So it was kind of a two-step process. Lex was like a thing. Like, I was like, I knew I wanted to play someone different than Morgan from the first season. Like, I wanted someone a little bit less like grounded, a little bit more like chaos. And I was like, what a weird time to be a teenager, right? And I was thinking of a lot of like the kids in high school and college who had their like journeys cut short by COVID, and like these seniors who weren't graduating because they were, you know, in quarantine. And I was just like, that's such a weird time to like exist. So I was like, I really think I want Lex to be like mid-college age in New York City, because I think like there's something really volatile about that. Specifically, I picked her being a music major because literally at the time that this happened, I started teaching myself the mandolin. So I was like, musical, let's do it.
Excuse me.
But the tie-in for the Cooper part, it literally came to me because I feel like I've talked about it on our stream, but also I'm not it's my favorite line in the whole damn show of Sarah saying drugs, I sell hardcore drugs.
Yep.
And so I was like, I think I just like whispered it to myself in my car as I was driving. I was just like, drugs, I sell hardcore drugs. And I was like, wouldn't that be cool if like, oh my God. And I just kept being like, and then I was like, that she's the daughter of Jimmy Cooper.
Yeah.
Who's the next door neighbor, and she's from Austin. She wanted to get out of there. She wanted to go pursue music, like, and just started coming up with this backstory of like, what tie-in could I have that was just kind of so arbitrary, but also would put me in connection with like such major characters.
Yeah, cool. I love that. No, I think that's really, I think that's something fun that we get to do with a known property, is that we get to have those tie-ins, we get to have those little homages, which is always a lot of fun. Well, cool. I wanted to kind of know just where Lex came from. So let's continue on. Let's, Emily, unless you need a second with the crazy puppy.
It's gonna be the same in a minute as it is right now.
Okay. So speaking of crazy puppy, where did Anita, Kent, and Bo come from?
Anita and Bo came from, initially I really wanted to just play the Protector's skin. That's like kind of where it started. Angie played it last time and I wanted to say not today. But I was thinking about like, what kind of person, because I think it's easy, especially with the skins that you have, to see where those skins fit into the apocalypse. But I was trying to figure out, how does that fit into the real world? And like the easy thing was a mom, which Angie had already done, or like a teacher, which feels like just me.
Yeah.
And so I kind of wanted to figure out like, how could you be in that protector role without it being one of those things, and animals made the most sense. And then I also thought about, what would it be like to come from a really big family and have a lot of people, but especially living in a big city like that, be really far away from your family, and know that the safe place to be is with them and you have left.
Wow.
And then you threw in the twist of my brother coming to visit me.
Yeah.
That day, I said, I think a couple days before we started, I said, oh yeah, I guess Andy would probably come visit me sometime. So he's the most supportive of my siblings. And you said, oh, so he could be visiting you that day. Like, I guess he could. I don't think he is, but like, I guess he could be. So,
yeah, I just like to throw some trauma at you.
Yeah, I should have known.
Yeah, and then did having a dog with Anita just come from our dog?
Yeah, I mean, partially, but it also was like, again, like, what happens if you have a dog in the apocalypse? I think I probably
you found out. Yeah.
I knew building that character that he might not live, but I thought it added a whole nother set of like stakes for her,
Of course, yeah. No, I think it was honestly fun to navigate too, from a GM's perspective, and also he just was cute. Animals are just like immediately everyone loves animals, especially in a tabletop role-playing game, I feel like.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Sophie, where was Ash? Where did she come from?
They.
Oh yeah, they. Thank you. Yeah, they. Where did they come from?
Right. Yeah. Ash is a little bit of me. I think all my characters are kind of manifestations of different versions of Sophie on different timelines, different circumstances.
Yeah, for sure. I totally understand that.
Yeah, for Sophie, was if I was an AFAB trans person, but also took a lot of mirroring of my relationship with my ex-wife and my relationship with school and medicating through ADHD, in terms of some substance stuff that I thankfully didn't fall quite so deep as I portrayed Ash to have, but not dissimilar and not so far away from that. And I also, when I was in school, started studying nursing, and that's kind of where I thought I was going to go for a little while, and ultimately didn't go that way. But I think all of the parts of Ash came from potential parts of my life, or actualized parts of my life, and that's kind of what I built this character around.
I think that's one of the greatest things about tabletop role-playing games, and especially something like this that is set in a more quote-unquote modern setting, especially this, I mean, specifically Season 2 is a very modern setting. It allows us to explore parts of ourselves that we might not be able to explore in real life, and I just think that's so cool, and I like that you attack the character that way. Okay, well, obviously we're going to dive into these characters more, but Matt, where did Mr. James Carraway come from in your mind?
Sir James Carraway!
James Carraway. Yes, I've always liked the idea of someone using, crazy circumstances to reinvent themselves, whether they've fallen past, they've become a person that they've hated, and, it's a chance to, become their, person that they would rather themselves be.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the reason I chose it. I also really like the charismatic skin from the one shot, and I wanted to replay that.
Yeah.
So I was like, a person who's probably maybe a good person at one time, but because of fame or whatever, has become this kind of horrible person, and their chance of redemption. I also feel like I could, it's not too far for me to pull off a bitter failed comedian. So, there's part of me in that for sure.
Yeah, tabletop role-playing games also allow you to explore parts of yourself that you don't want to happen. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about what kind of person, charismatic, that person trying to reinvent himself, and I thought the idea of being famous was fun in a world where fame doesn't matter one bit. I think that's a fun angle in it.
That's cool. No, I think that's I mean, if anybody had a redemption arc, it was definitely Jimmy. So I think that starting, I think that what you started saying is a very interesting thing that I didn't even really think about myself, is like the fact that he used this incredibly terrifying and difficult situation to become a different person, become a better person objectively. I love that. And so that leads me to my next question, which we can just go ahead and keep on you, Matt, if you don't mind. You played in the one shot. You've now played here in season 2 of The Remains. What's just your like general impression of this world and of this specific story that we created, tying in with the fact that I know that you're a big fan of the property, The Last of Us itself?
Well, I mean, first of all, the mechanics and the classes and the crafting that you have created are super fun, super good. I enjoyed the like reskinning of the abilities, like 5 checks and the search checks. All that stuff is great, and cool. I really like the my charismatic character, like having some things that's there's bonus actions that I can use to really like influence. So mechanically perfect. Great job, Zach.
Oh, well, thank you.
As far as like the Last of Us world, I mean, the part of the reason I love the game so much is the story and how I think it does better than most other apocalyptic settings of finding like the human in people.
Yeah.
And I'm it's really exciting to get to explore that in a role-playing setting that's not fantasy. It's grounded in reality. Like I'm playing Jimmy Carraway as grounded and real as I possibly can, as far as his character goes.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting.
Yeah,
that's really exciting.
That's great. I think that's awesome, and I completely agree. I feel like we talked about this in season 1 as well. It really felt like we were able to have. I mean, it felt like we were enacting cutscenes, at times with some of the in-depth emotional conversations that we would have. I mean, I loved every interaction that Mina and Lex had, and Ash and Billy and that like buddy, like platonic soulmate kind of relationship was really fun. And obviously Officer Kavanaugh and Jimmy and like that back and forth. So it's just like these like relationships that form that allow these conversations to happen is something that I really enjoy about this setting and about this framework. Sophie, what about you? What like we spend a lot of time in the fantasy world on Charm Persons, and you've Dick. Whoa. Okay. Dipped your toes into more modern settings with Monster Hearts and stuff like that.
It's true.
But having a like long session and like a modern, I mean, as modern as you can get in New York City, late 2000s. Like, what was that like for you?
Well, that's why I was I wrote down a couple notes of like, oh, what was it like to play as a healer in this setting?
Yeah.
And, I want to hear more from Emily too about the bow situation, because in any other fantasy setting in D&D, you'd be thrilled to have a dog, because it's like, wow, here's this companion that I will keep safe, and it's so hard to die in 5e.
Yeah.
In this one, it's like, oh god, I have to keep this dog alive, and it's so fragile, and so are we as characters without the death saves and without some magical ability to bring ourselves back. It's just so much more treacherous, and I love that.
Yeah.
But the pressure of being the healer in that setting of just like resource management, and you're constantly running out of like, it's like, oh, I'm not going to be able to save everybody.
I know, yeah. I mean, you really had to navigate. I mean, without beating around the bush, the blunt way to put it is like, who's worth it? who's worth it? What do I need to do right now? And I mean, it wasn't even really planned on my end, but it did end up being like just enough every time.
It was. And then in D&D, where you've got a cleric and you've got spells, and like you might run out of spell slots,
Yeah.
and you might run out of health potions, and people are going to die, and people are going to get downed, and there's consequences, assuredly. But this one's like, oh, there's no sleeping and like coming back.
Yeah.
I'm not going to regain these things that I've used. People aren't going to heal themselves. Broken bones, or even the hit points that they've lost. And there was one moment where I didn't announce that I was healing.
Oh yeah.
So I marked the points off.
Yeah.
I was like, I gotta get myself back up to 10.
I love that.
And I usually am not a selfish character in any of the games that we play, but I was like, I'm just gonna do this one for me.
I love that. Well, and I think that what you touched on is like it was the added stakes of this world that like drove you to do that, I would say. Yeah,
and it was in a moment of like a very tense a time. I think it was right after we got in the fight with Calvin, and I healed Jimmy a little bit, and then I was like, I got clipped, I think, and I had to heal myself a little bit too.
Yeah, no, that was I think that was actually, it was such a short thing, but that was one of the deadliest fights that happened, was that Calvin fight.
And to talk about, you said that it was like enacting a cutscene in a way. To bring it to another, related to a different video game of Mass Effect, of having every once in a while the Renegade or Paragon choice come up. And Jimmy, I think James came up a couple times and just like slam their hand down on the Renegade button.
Oh, for sure. For sure. There was definitely...
Like, we're dealing with the consequences of this choice now. Amazing. This is great. And it's...
Calvin will remember this.
Yeah.
Angie, what about you? Like, I know that you were obviously in season 1, so what about season 2 being in this more modern setting? How did that feel for you?
I don't think I've ever been more stressed playing a game in my life. Because, and I mean, we all kind of saw it, of just, like, that moment where I, like, shot the old woman, and then I decided not to shoot the old woman, and then, like, because there's, like, a part of me, and I don't know at what level this part actually exists. But, like, I know I am the friend that any friend group that I'm a part of knows that I am going to survive the apocalypse.
Yeah.
And, like, I am the friend who, like, even today, I don't know if y'all heard about this, but there's, like, a news thing going around about, like, a fungus spreading.
Stop it.
And my friend at work was like, oh, look at this article, and I read it, and I was like, oh, well, I'm ready.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, I'm glad I'm your friend. Like, so there's a part of me that is very much in tune with that, like, I'll do what needs to get done. It was something that was challenging in season 1 because I purposely decided to play a character that, like, acted against that.
Yeah.
But in this specific setting, having to, like, be someone who doesn't know anything about what's going on, and, like, there were a couple times I think all of us had that moral quandary of, like, oh no, they're shooting people, but those people were attacking other people, but they're still people, we don't really know what's... And so to, like, navigate that kind of narrative, and not me as a player be like, oh no, Rachel got bit, she's infected, she's must die.
Yes.
Like, to be, and, like, I was really proud of us for all just kind of, like, letting that play out, and, like, having Ash be like, oh, you're bit, oh, poor baby, we'll take care of you. And no one was like, and so that, like, little small stuff of, like, kind of re-practicing what it would actually feel like to be going, like, through the beginning of this was, like, my favorite part about the whole thing.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. That's great. I think that you brought up a lot of really good points there, and I feel like that's why I love you all as players, is because you all are character and narrative first, you know? Because metagaming, in my opinion, is just like not, you are taking fun away from yourself. Like when you do that, not only are you taking fun away from maybe other people, but you're taking it away from yourself. Like it's more fun to let yourself live in the even if it's feigned ignorance, live in the ignorance of the moment, you know?
Yeah, if we would have like been like, oh, she's bit, let's like execute her. And then
Yeah.
but the payoff of like, oh, we didn't know what's gonna happen after she gets bit is way better than
Oh yeah, so much better. Like having that moment of, you know, Ash experiencing like panic, like I mean like true panic, and you know Anita stepping in. And speaking of Anita, Emily, what did you feel about this like more modern, I say more modern, technically the other one was further in the future, but more modern setting?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think just kind of like to go off of what Angie said, like it was really interesting to see how not only is morality different pre-apocalypse and post-apocalypse, it's also different at the beginning of the apocalypse versus 25 years in.
Yeah.
So like figuring out like, you know, my conversations with Andy and like all the points he was making were really valid, but does it matter?
Yeah.
Like, no, these are not good people. No, they are not making the decisions I would like them to make. Does it actually matter?
Yeah.
And like figuring out where morality lies in that first day when all you need to do is get someone safe.
Yeah, I mean that was something I kind of found in the moment too, honestly, with Andy, because I had that same feeling. I had that feeling of like, you know, and I think I actually was inspired by Sophie and Sophie / Ash's reaction to Calvin being weirded out by the bite, because honestly, Calvin being weirded out by the bite in that moment was kind of just a gut reaction as me, the GM. I didn't necessarily plan for that. And then Ash's reaction of like, we don't know that, I was like, oh, they're completely correct. Like, we don't know that. And so then that kind of had my brain going to, I mean, they don't know a lot of things. Like, and so like having Andy have that conversation with Anita of like, are these people still people? Are these people that we want to have? You know, it's because, you know, Joel tells Tommy to keep driving at the beginning of the game and says that someone else will be along. And like, there's something so interesting in that. And it's like, Joel is not a good dude, as we find out later. I mean, you know, I think that he ends up being what he needs to be and ends up being a good man. But, you know, most of his life, I think that Joel's kind of makes bad decisions. But does he make bad decisions or does he make smart decisions? And like, where is the line there with that? And so I thought that was fun to navigate with Anita and Andy.
And even our back and forth on whether or not to leave or take Calvin.
Yeah.
was to me, that was kind of our like biggest moral quandary aside from the bite. And because
it's obvious you leave Calvin behind. Like, it's obvious that that's what you do.
But we could have just left him behind with like no consequences. But then there was a consequence. So then I'm curious as to like what would have happened if we took him. Like there would always be like there's always a cause and effect. And I think that's something that particularly in the narration of the game, Zach, that you've like gotten down really well is just like you are being like, Calvin will remember this. You are being like, this choice was made that's going to lead to this, whether or not you like planned for it or not. I think you have a really good grasp of like the through lines of all of those threads.
I'm getting better at planning for them because of how often I don't plan for them. So it's becoming easier to plan for them because of the times that I don't. Calvin was a in particularly planned thing, because what I thought was interesting about the whole Calvin thing is the question of, do you really want your enemy not right where you can see them? And even if a person is someone that you don't want around you, does that mean you can't get any use out of them? And just kind of like that dichotomy, that weird thing there, because like if you would have kept Calvin with you, you know, Officer Kavanaugh would have lived. And maybe later on down the line, Calvin would have stopped Jimmy from talking to those guys because Calvin would have been the one to mouth off. So like you never know how this you never know how, but exactly, but in the moment it makes complete total sense to leave Calvin behind. It does. He's given you every reason to leave him behind, and in the real world that is what you would do, but it's not the real world anymore. It's now a different world, and like what do you do in this new world? And
interestingly enough, I think to the point of like the pre versus post of like morality, like that is such a pre-morality mindset. Take Calvin so you can keep him close so you can use him is such a post.
Exactly. Well, and I think the most like, post mindset is kill Calvin.
Yeah.
Like that's like that's
and none of us were even thinking
oh no, for sure. I don't think anyone would have suggested that, but we jumped to 25 years after all of this. The answer is kill Calvin. Like that's what the answer is. The answer is once what was his name? The British guy.
Lane,
thank you. Once I'm full on in season 3. Once Lane knocked him out, like that's like, I mean, Ash literally said, I kind of wish he would have killed him. Because I think that is what probably should have happened. Okay, well, we can talk about this for a long time, but before we jump into kind of stuff that you guys liked that you experienced, but also stuff that you would have loved to experience that we didn't get to. Before we jump into that, I kind of want to see if we have any audience questions. So I know we posted on Instagram today. I know we got some responses. So Angie, if you want to shoot one of those out.
Yeah. We'll start with one question by the lovely Michael Brigance, who you may remember from
Zachariah Williams Gavin.
Zachariah Williams Gavin and all of the other one-shots that he's done with us.
Yeah. The Moody Hot Boys that he plays.
The Moody Hot Boys! And Walter. But he has a question for a couple of us, but Zach, we'll start with you.
Okay.
He said, how was Season 2 different as a GM than Season 1? And did Season 2 affect any plans you have about Season 3?
Great question.
That's a really good question.
I would say the biggest difference between Season 2 and Season 1 was the obstacles that you would face. The obstacles that you face in Season 2 are going to be incredibly different from the years down the line. I have to provide you with high stake, high consequence things without having the lead up of, clickers or bloaters or like roaming bandit groups and stuff like that, or scarcity of resources. I had to take you from modern day, everything is right at your fingertips, to within minutes you're fighting for your life, and do that in a way that I didn't have any of the same tools that I had in Season 1. I only had one tool, and that was the runners. And so I just threw a lot of you at them, a lot of them at you. But another big difference I would say is kind of in first of all, this system is going to be constantly growing. Even in Season 3, there's going to be some different things. So the changes in the system was a big difference as well. The adding of the bites and the adding a lower DC for the bites and stuff like that. And I think that narratively makes sense too. You wouldn't be like 25 years after this apocalypse, for sure as a fact you don't let teeth get fucking near you. Yeah. Whereas at the beginning it's like, okay, I'm gonna let them bite my arm so that I can then do whatever I can with my hand. You know what I mean? So like narratively it makes sense that you aren't as wary of a bite as you would be. So yeah, I think that was a big difference. And then I think the last major difference that then ties into the answer of the second part of that question is every single decision that was made was life or death and very important. And that's something that Emily and I kind of talked about off stream, which was the pace of Season 2 was incredibly different from Season 1. I mean, I expected Season 2 originally to be the first 4 days, and we barely got in 12 hours. So just the sheer amount or the sheer lack of downtime, and we were still able to find moments of downtime, we were able to have really cool scenes in there, so that was fun. But the pacing was just so different. It didn't feel it felt as if, you know, the opening prologue of The Last of Us was the entire game. And so it's just like I felt it felt hard to breathe at times, you know, metaphorically speaking.
Actually speaking.
Yeah, yeah. And so to answer the second part of the question, yeah, there are some things in season 2 that did inform season 3. I do think that I loved the uniqueness of seeing this outbreak from the beginning, and I'm so glad that we did it from that perspective. But it felt a little different from The Last of Us. You know, it felt like it wasn't necessarily... The Last of Us feels more... What's the word I'm looking for? Like, destitute. You know, it feels more bare. It feels more scarce. Whereas this felt more chock full and, you know, and I think you know what I'm saying. And so for season 3, I'm going to be excited to go back to that well-established post-morality, as we were talking about earlier. It's not that I like that more. I feel like that it is more... It allows for... You know, it's coming... To put it in D&D terms, season 2 was... Level 1, you all start in a prison, and going back to season 3 is going to be you're a well-established adventuring party and you're level 10, and like, you know what I mean? There's just like, you know what you need to do. There's more abilities. There's more knowledge that is available to you because you've had those experiences. You're 30, 40, whatever, in the post-apocalypse. You've lived through shit. Whereas in season 2, it was so new and so fresh, and that's why it was exciting and fun. But I'm very interested and excited to go back to season 3 and explore what the obstacles are when you know how to handle yourself more, if that makes sense. That was a very long-winded answer. I apologize.
I think Michael Bergantz would be very pleased. He also has a question for Matt. He asks, what do you hope the legacy of James is?
Oh.
That's a great question.
Wow. That is a good question. What do I hope the legacy of James is? You know, I'm under there's no question in my mind that, you know, no one's going to look to James as like a paragon of goodness in the world. I mean, I don't think that's definitely not his legacy for sure. But I think, you know, I think his legacy is that, you know, you don't have to be, let's see, how do I word this? You don't have to be who you are now if that's not who you want yourself to be.
I love that.
Whoa.
I love that. You don't have to be who you are now if that is not who you want to be. I love that.
I'm gonna stop talking.
No, I want that on a t-shirt.
Yeah. That's amazing. No, I like that a lot.
And then last question from Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Angie and Emily, this is for us. Did your experiences in season 1 at all affect how you went into season 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think...
Great questions, Mike.
Yeah.
Our moderator.
Yeah.
Going back to, like, the skins, it's like, I could easily see Anita being more on, like, the scrappy end 25 years into the apocalypse. Mm-hmm. So I think it really informed, like, how I built a character and, like, who is this person in the real world versus how are they going to fit into, you know, a society within the apocalypse. And I think I intentionally built somebody who is going to be a little bit clueless, because starting at the beginning, that's more fun. That's more interesting. That's something you don't get to really play somebody who's clueless 25 years into the pandemic or into the apocalypse. So
I love that.
that's my answer.
I
about you,
don't want to
Angie?
say Morgan was clueless. She was a little out of her
On the verge, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of joked about it, Emily, but I think I think both of us kind of took it really seriously. Is that we were like, we can't be in love in this one. We can't, like, our characters cannot find attraction to each other, and so we kind of like. I think this is the most that we've ever really not connected.
Yeah.
Like
There wasn't a lot of
bit...
Lex Anita. There wasn't a lot.
Yeah, and I think honestly, like I felt kind of bad the first like 2 sessions, and especially when like Mina started paying attention to me. I thought that you and Mina were like a thing, and so Lex was very.
So did I.
Like this. And then Mina, because I literally, as Lex, was like, I saw the two of you together, and like I was like, oh, I'm not even gonna bother. And then Zach is like, Mina walks up to you, and I'm like.
No, I think Anita had a crush on Richie. So I think by the time you guys started chatting, it was not a big deal.
Okay.
But that was interesting to like our character. You and I just play well together. We like to play together.
We find each other. Like our characters find each other. Like regardless of.
Yeah, but these two characters just didn't have any reason to. They just didn't have anything in common necessarily. Like there was no downtime to connect.
Yeah.
Well, and you had your. Kind of in the same, I guess not the same vein, but like we each had our NPCs, you know, like we had our.
I was actually just about to talk on that, Angie, if you don't mind me jumping in here.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this as you two were talking, thinking about it. I would say the vast majority of the conversations and the scenes that were had in this season were between one of your characters and an NPC. I feel like not really any of the 4 of you had super close moments.
That's true.
And so Sophie, actually, I'm glad you're speaking up because I wanted to ask you, your relationship with Rachel, your relationship with Billy. I don't know. Can you what are your thoughts on that? The fact that like the NPCs had the relationship with the characters rather than the characters having the relationships within each other.
That was a fun change from I think how it usually would go, and especially in this group that we are so RP and relationship like driven, that 4 of us didn't really connect. That we would lean on these other relationships because they some of them, my relationship with Billy was well established in at least in like the backstory.
Yeah.
Same thing with Rachel, and then some of the people had like new relationships to build on and attach to.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to how well you can get into the character in the mind of an NPC that we can kind of attach to that. And you play so well, I think, with each of us.
It's easy to play with.
Hey.
But
HR.
I'm HR.
Oh no.
I'll put on a different hat.
But yeah, I had a really good time kind of building that out. And there's some things that like I think any of us will just give you a thread of backstory, and you weave a tapestry with it so quickly.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, but I also think it's a testament to you guys in that, like, I mean, Billy, you brought in Billy, and Angie brought in TJ, Anita brought in Andy, and I know that Jimmy didn't bring in Officer Kavanaugh, but Matt brought in such a clear Jimmy that an NPC was able to, and so like you guys. And I think it's a testament to you guys knowing these characters that you've built so much that they can interact with these people and just like, and because the relationship is there, it's so established, it feels, because that's what would happen. Ash wouldn't go randomly talk to the stand-up comedian. They would talk to, the person who they knew there, who was like, their like, I mean, at this point, chosen family. And I think that that's another thing that was super interesting about season 2 that I really liked is, trauma bonding is such a real thing. And I truly don't find it hard to believe that after 12 hours, Alicia and Jimmy would be crying about the life that they didn't have with each other, and Mina would be dedicating herself to Lex, and Ash would be agreeing to go with Billy to find his family. Like, I feel like those weren't hard things to buy into because of what the characters were, what they went through with each other. It was almost, I feel like the conversations in between the four of you almost didn't need to happen because it was clear. It's like, okay, we're a group now. Like, that's what we need to do.
Quicker than a lot of other
Yeah.
settings that we've played in.
For sure, yeah. And I think that's once again another testament to the world, because like in these D&D settings, in these fantasy worlds, it's normal for characters to be paranoid of strangers, to like be paranoid of like, you know, but like you guys had no reason to not just want to latch on to humanity, especially when it's all of humanity versus this other thing, you know, which is what makes the humans that don't agree with that philosophy so dangerous. Well, I'm going to keep us going here because I want to make sure that we get to everything that we're going to get to. So I want to ask the four of you, before we get into like what you did, like what happened that you really enjoyed. Actually, whatever, I'll just do it on the fly. What's the best order to ask these two questions? The two questions I want to ask you are, what did happen that like hit home with you and you really enjoyed in season 2, or a moment that you really, you know, you loved to lick your fingers of? Or, and then the second question is, what didn't happen? What did you want to explore more? So what do you think the order is to ask those two questions?
I think what was good and then what we wanted more of.
Okay, cool. So let's just go one at a time. And Angie, you spoke up first. So Angie, what happened in season 2 that you really enjoyed, and then what would you have loved to see, or what would you have loved to see more of? I'm putting you on the spot, I know.
What did I enjoy of season 2?
Wow, apparently nothing.
Like no, like all of it,
just kidding. No, I'm kidding.
I'm
I'm
trying
totally
to
kidding.
think of stuff I haven't said yet, because a lot of it I think was that exploration of the beginning.
Yeah.
I think for me, and like especially just like personally with Lex, playing a child,
Yeah.
essentially was like especially in those very early sessions, I followed all of you because you were adults. Like, there was adult people telling me and TJ that they had a safe spot. We were initially going to go to my dorm room and like lock ourselves in, and then like just like wait it out, I guess. But then all of a sudden we're swept up, and so I feel like this journey, like the journey of empowerment that Lex definitely went on, but like seeing everybody's characters change from like their time in the park to their time getting to the Kent farm. Yeah. Like, and just especially for Lex, by the end of it, I was like, no, I fucking got this. Like, yeah, I got it. But at the beginning, just being like utterly lost and utterly like calling my dad and being like, Dad, you're not answering. Dad, what's up? Yeah. Call Joel. Joel's next door. What is he gonna do about it? Like, yeah. Just desperately trying to find like any sort of resource, and yeah, just the storyline, just the fact that it was, I think Zach, like Emily and I kind of talked about it, but like we didn't make it. We made it 12 hours, and literally that was almost real time. Based on how we were playing like 3 hours a night, four times. So we like literally in real time lived this out. Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's true. It's kind of crazy. Okay, so then what would you have liked to explore more of, or what would you have liked to see that we didn't see? I as much as I liked navigating with the NPCs, there were a couple times where I was like, because like Ash especially was so involved in healing all of us. Yeah. That there were so many times where I was like, well, they're healing me. Yeah. What would Lex want to know? Like, what would Lex need to say? And there was a couple times, I think, Sophie, I was like, thank you. and then I wanted to like start a conversation and be like, how do you know that guy? Like, what are you? Do you do this often? Like, how did you get into the like? Because Lex was just such a deeply curious person, and because she was so young and like wanted answers and didn't know what to do. Like, I kind of felt myself latching on a little bit to like wanting to know more. And there was a couple of times with James that I was like, that's really fucking weird that he's here. Like, he's a celebrity, and like the whole thing with the Vine and
oh my god,
and
so
being
funny.
like, oh my god. So there were a couple moments where I like wanted to get a little bit more involved with the PCs.
Yeah.
That I think in a longer game or like a less like go game, we would have had more time to explore.
For sure, because there would have been the classic like, what do you guys do before you go to sleep? I go and I talk to this. Like, that's when those conversations probably would have happened.
Well, and especially because Ash ended up narratively in like what we decided happened, seeing Lex almost shoot the old lady. Like that could have been a whole thing of like Ash coming to me and being like, what the fuck was that about? And me being like, oh, like, yeah. So there were those little moments, and you know, I kind of, now going back, I'm like, I'm kind of glad it didn't happen, because I think it does leave like room for these characters to grow and like hold that.
Yeah, amazing. Well, speaking of Ash, Sophie, same two questions to you.
So yeah, what I really liked was playing in a new system that I really like the skin system, that we're kind of borrowing some things from 5th edition and borrowing some things from Monster Hearts. And also it still feels so unique into itself. I like that it pulls a lot of mechanics from what feels like the game of resource collecting, while also being like simple enough that like me, who didn't know what the system was, like, oh, pick the book smart one. That's how I like to play my characters anyway. So we'll roll with that, and that paid off really well.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I want to see, and I know that this is like, it's a really good one for these like small stories, for these long shots. I love like a vignette kind of thing. And if it stays there, that's fine. I do want to see what it would look like if this was drawn out a little bit further.
Of course, yeah.
And kind of, as Angie was saying, having some more interactions on the character level of being able to connect. I love the NPCs that we had to interact with, and also there were some moments where it's like, oh, we haven't really connected with these other people, and like there's glue that's holding us together, but I would understand why the Kents are a little weird about us, like all of a sudden we're all going to their farm.
Yeah, for sure.
Bunch of strangers.
And there's moments too where it's like, oh, we like had that played out with Lex killing the woman on the dock. That might have been the point where it's like, hey, Kents, I mean,
that would have put the nail in the coffin for Andy 100%.
That we are broken, and y'all leaving, like, because me overhearing that conversation is like, well, I'll let them do what they want to do. And me hearing that conversation about not being sure to bring us, I'd be like, yeah, you shouldn't. We have gone past a threshold now.
For sure.
At the very least, Lex can't come with us. Ultimately. And there's moments too where if we draw this out over a longer period, that I like would love to explore, and thinking about it now of just like, what is the like continuation of Ash's struggle with some of their demons, and there's a lot of dissociation that happens when you're in survival mode. We talked very, very briefly about how Ash was like, I can't think about what happened to the old people that we just like left behind. And a lot of dissociation of like, I can't worry about my family right now. They are over there. But then seeing the characters of Lex, who's like, I gotta go find my family. It's like, is there guilt there? Is there shame there? Does that break down some of the foundations that Ash has built to like overcome their their addictions.
Yeah.
They're with Billy, but what if something happens to Billy? So
Yeah.
No, I think that's I mean, who knows? Maybe in the future, we can have a future season on the Kent farm. A couple months later, see what would happen there, and how that would be fleshed out. That would be fun to see.
I'll be watching the stream from home.
Yeah. Well, Matt, let's go ahead and give the dead their chance to speak. Same 2 questions to you.
Yes. So I was thinking after that last session about Jimmy's death and how weirdly poetic it was in a lot of ways. I kind of loved it, to be honest. And specifically around the name change.
Yeah.
Because I think at one point Angie maybe said James as maybe a joke.
I kept calling you James.
Throughout
it. Yeah, because I didn't want. I don't think Lex, for some reason, wanted to separate Jimmy Caraway, the celebrity, from this person that was fighting with her.
Yes.
Well,
So
also,
I just kept calling you James.
But also, I mean, and we didn't even ever talk about it, but I mean, Lex's dad's name, who she just lost, is Jimmy.
Yeah, and my brother's name is James.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you kept saying James, I in my head I was like, I like the idea of this guy Jimmy who's famous. His entire life is being known basically as Jimmy, and then now in this world where that doesn't matter, I feel like it took a lot for Jimmy to be I'm gonna rebrand myself as James, as a name that no one knows me as.
Yeah.
Especially so close to his eventual death. And then the last thing with the people that came up on the boats and James was talking to them. I mean, objectively a bad thing to do and probably got the group in a lot more danger, but that was a hill that he was willing to die on, that they were deliberately calling him. He just had this change and he was confident in it now, and they were deliberately trying to not say that to him.
Yeah. I love that. No, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yes, I really enjoyed that part of it. Now, sucks to die, but it's not kind of fun to die.
Yeah, I mean, especially the last episode,
Sophie loves dying.
Yeah.
Sophie practically begs me to kill their characters.
Yeah. I want to feel the consequences.
No, I get it.
Emotional.
And then what did you what would you have liked to see more of, or what would you like to see at all?
Yeah, so I mean, when I realized this is the beginning of the outbreak, I was kind of looking forward to, obviously the first few hours are fun to role play, the chaos of that, but I was looking forward to day 5 of we've survived the initial, we have a bunch of people gathered in our place, now what do? We making a QZ? What are we doing? I like that dynamic. That's kind of fun to explore. So maybe in the future, but
yeah, for sure. Maybe you can play one of the Kents. You can come back as one of the Kents.
Their names all start with A. You got. That's what you got.
Oh my god, I was losing my mind in our Discord when we were figuring that out. I was like, actually, we gotta go. This is a Duggar situation.
One of my first character decisions that I told Zach was, it's one of those families where there's a lot of kids and their names all start with the same letter.
I love how it kind of the New York Weasleys. All right, well, speaking of the New York Weasleys, what about you, Emily?
I really liked how much character development there was in just those first 12 hours. I feel like I didn't have Anita as fleshed out as I typically have characters, and I think part of that is just because Anita was sort of finding herself still. And I think in a normal campaign, if I came into it with a character like that, it could take me a few sessions to really flesh out the character. Whereas pretty quickly with the life and death decisions we had to make, I fleshed out Anita and decided what she would do when push came to shove. Yeah. So I think that was cool. That was a cool way to do that. There were just little things that I would have loved to play with, Anita definitely had a little crush on Richie. It
Mhm.
would have been fun to see where that goes. She never really had time to stop and process enough to notice that he left the ape.
Mm-hmm. At least you
You
called
know,
it an
like-
ape.
Yep. Finally.
Learn.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, it doesn't.
By the way, because we never did talk about that, a note was left.
Okay. Wow.
A note was left on the
For the
ape.
people across the street, the hallway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
To try and get the ape out, or
They literally, all the note said was, take whatever you want from across the apartment, especially the ape.
Well, I hope they took him.
Especially.
I swear that's what it is. That's what it said. Especially the ape. I just thought
Season
that was funny.
4.
I just thought that was funny. Especially the ape.
Return of the Ape.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna have a and that's the other thing is, I mean, no, we won't because the
God.
bombing, you know, which was
Yeah.
something that was kind of crazy to see too.
That ape and those neighbors does so.
Or we go back and we play as the neighbors.
Yeah, and you guys get underground quick.
Yeah.
Just try to rescue the ape.
We,
That's the
or we,
whole
yeah, we figure out some other way to get out of New York.
Yeah, I love that. That would actually be fun.
So many possibilities.
Were you finishing stuff that you would have liked to see?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think also just like seeing which of the characters that we'd established ended up staying on the farm, which
Yeah.
characters ended up coming and going throughout the years, maybe not staying, but returning.
Yeah.
And also just like how the family receives all these people being
Mhm.
brought to the farm with them. I think there's just like an epilogue that would have been interesting with
Yeah.
with the family. But yeah, that would have all been like later in the apocalypse. I keep saying pandemic,
I get
which
it though.
depressing. And
I mean, it is a pandemic, technically.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah.
A fungal pandemic.
No, I love that, and I know that we kind of talked about. I mean, we already at the end of last episode we talked about where y'all see these characters, and so I don't feel like we need to necessarily touch on that again. But I do just I don't know. I guess I want to get maybe just like final impressions before we close out. Just like what are there any thoughts on your mind? Things that you want to say?
Yes. First of all, loved it. I just liked it. I really enjoyed it. It was a great change of pace, not only from like the normal TT RPGs that I play and we play, but you know, on a level of me personally.
Yeah.
I you know, I try to. I usually play characters that are like silly. I like being silly, and being silly is fun to me. But you know, there's definitely a little bit of silly in Jimmy. But I enjoyed the challenge, so to speak, of real stakes, real world of being, you know, playing a character that's can't laugh the apocalypse off like it's a joke, you know.
Yeah, I know. I think you nailed that too, and I was very excited when you jumped in to the Remain season 2 because, you know, those people who know Charmed Persons know that Matt is our Matt is our Sam Riegel. Matt's like the goofy, you know, ridiculous characters that you play, but also like Sam Riegel. I feel like those goofy, ridiculous characters always have like a heart and a real kernel of truth to them. And not only because of that, but because I know that you're a big fan of The Last of Us and you love the world. I mean, I knew you would be able to jump right into the, you know, I mean, more serious is such a general, weird way to put it, but, you know, just the more grounded vibe of The Remains compared to some of the other stuff that we have. And I thought that you navigated that perfectly because there are people that would still try to, you know, crack jokes and laugh, and I mean, I would be one of those people, you know. If an apocalypse actually happened and I was able to survive through it, you best believe I'd be the one like making jokes and trying to make people laugh, just because if you're not laughing, you're crying, you know. That's just kind of like, so I like to see a person like that, so I thought that was really cool with Jimmy. Yeah. Anybody else? Final thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's fucked up that the ape got left behind.
Yeah, man.
That bothered me more than most things that happened. That I was like, oh, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
And I would have done everything I could to get that ape, I think, probably out of the city.
Yeah. What a
It makes
weird
sense.
what a weird gimmick that I did. I don't know what I truly can't tell you right now what made me want to do that. I was like, okay, so there's
You
gonna be
wanted
these
to hurt us
people.
one more time.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I guess I do like throwing trauma at you sometimes. But yeah, I was just like, why? Okay, so there's these like, it'd be cool if they get saved from the military by these like, I don't know, like what would they be? Like armed thieves. Okay, so like why are armed thieves in the middle of Central Park? Like what's going on there? And why and how could they be morally okay enough that the party would want to stay with them? And like it was just like and I came up with kidnapping a prized ape. That's what I came up
like
with.
what better way for us to be like, why do you have guns? Why
Yeah.
are you armed? Why? And he's like, we stole an ape, and we're
Yeah.
like,
Oh.
My first thought wasn't
suddenly
even
I
like.
feel okay.
Yeah.
My first thought when you introduced them wasn't even that like, oh, they are stealing the ape for like a billionaire. I was like, oh, they're trying to like somebody is like, hey, we need like they know that the apocalypse is going to go down and we need to
Trying
like
to save
collect like these.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
Preserve
Yeah.
the animal DNA.
Yeah.
Because it's such a rare thing that this one was albino or
Yeah.
some special.
Oh.
So I was like, oh, they're trying to like do like a
Oh wow, that's crazy.
a living collection or an arc or something like that.
Yeah.
Like a
was like,
super
oh.
top secret government team or something.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. That would have been way cooler than just
That's
a bunch
season
of people.
Season 5.
Cool. I love that.
I think I really like. Oh,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, please.
The thing that I really like about, even the one shot through to season 1 through to season 2, and the reason I think I talked a lot in therapy about my obsession with The Last of Us and like why it specifically gets to me. But I think like I love I think it was mentioned earlier, just that human factor in it. Like, who doesn't love to see what humans would do when all of the rules start over, or like there's no set standards for living or being? And I think playing this out, especially in this first, like the beginnings, is something that like I've been thinking about a lot, is like watching it form from, because it's one thing to do the like Joel 25 years, you see why he became that. Like you're like, oh yeah, this life is hard, he has to do what he has to do to survive. But like being in it and watching that progress within yourself and around you is like a wild kind of awe-inspiring experience for me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, nail on the head is the reason why I love it too. I think it's I love apocalypses in all forms, and I think The Last of Us just apocalypse media, I guess I should say. And I think The Last of Us just does what I like about them the most, the best, which is what you just said. It's, what happens when humanity goes to my iPhone isn't working to food, water, and shelter.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that drastic change like? What is it like when a mailman and a Wall Street broker and a pizza boy are forced to survive with one another? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, I think that stuff's cool. Emily, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I just think like specifically this season helps to really inform how I'm going to build specifically characters for the Remains in the future.
Yeah.
And something that I obviously didn't get to do with like Jenna because they were so little when everything started, is that like these decisions that are made in those first 24 hours or the first week even are so influential on like who this character is.
Yeah.
And before we played this, I don't know that I would have thought so hard about that. Whereas like going into season 3 with a character who was an adult, spoiler, who was an adult when everything started, I'm really thinking about like, what did she do during those days? And like, how did that shape who she is now and who she became? It was like an interesting character building experiment in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I love that. No, I think that that's great. And speaking of, before we wrap up, I'll go ahead and leave you guys and the viewers with a little teaser of season 3. We see an open sky, blue, heat blistering, kind of maybe 1 or 2 very wispy clouds in the sky, and we hear the sweet sounds of string music, violin, and we see the skyline of the city of Atlanta, destitute, destroyed, and surrounding it, tall concrete walls with checkpoints here and there, gates here and there, manned by dusty, covered military individuals. And we zoom forward, and as we do, the camera cuts, and we see boots on top of concrete, kind of moving rhythmically to the music. And as it pans up, we see an individual dressed in day-to-day survival gear, thick, long pants, pocketed, probably cargo pants, worn clothes, haven't been washed properly in a long time. And we see a woman in her 40s, long blonde hair, kind of graying, lightening up in the sun. And instead of playing the violin, an adult Lex Cooper is cleaning her rifle on a rooftop as she overlooks the QZ of Atlanta. Sun glistening, shines off of a firefly pendant hanging from her neck. Just as she takes a deep breath, thoughts of TJ, Jimmy, her mother flying through her mind. Right as she leans down and looks through the scope, pointing it to the Fedra checkpoint on the other side. And that is your teaser for season 3. As in season 3, we will be in the Atlanta QZ many years later. Emily is going to be making a return. Emily going 3 for 3 here for the first 3 seasons of The Remains.
Yeah.
So Emily will be returning, as well as Michael. So we're going to have Michael back from season 1, playing a completely new and different character, as well as Emily. And then 2 new people who you have seen before. One, but they are new to The Remains. One being J-Mo, who plays Chad, runs the Candlekeep, Longshot, you know J-Mo. And then Kelsey Scomer, who has been, or not Kelsey Scomer, I do this all the time now. She's married.
Kelsey, last name.
Kelsey, her last name that I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm so sorry. I went to school with you. I remember your last name being different. I'm seeing if I can see it on the Discord. Do I see it? Okay, no, I don't. Sorry, Kelsey. But Kelsey, who has been a guest on One Shots that we've had, she's going to be joining us as well. So very excited to jump into season 3 and see yet again a different perspective. We've seen the beginning of the apocalypse. We've seen a self-established community. And now diving into the military-controlled QZ, yet another point of view, so that'll be exciting. So stay tuned at Charmed Persons on all social media. The first session of that's going to be 6 p.m. Central on February 15th, 2 weeks from today. And this coming Sunday, we have another Teroth session, and then also on February 13th at 7 p.m. Central, is the first session of the Monster Hearts Longshot, which is going to be emceed by Angie, and that is going to be me, Sophie, Matt, and a special guest, right? Yes. Yeah. So completely new to Charmed Persons.
Never before seen before.
Never. They don't exist until we look at them. They're Schrodinger's guest.
Schrodinger's guest.
But But I really enjoyed season 2. I thought this was such a fun perspective to see this outbreak from. I was very glad to have Emily and Angie back. I can't wait for future seasons to have Sophie and Matt back, because you definitely will see them again for sure. So I'll just go ahead and end with the same sign off that I always do. Thank you to my players, the best players a GM can ask for. And as always, everybody say bye.